Everyone, pay special attention to the giant crowd here as Trudeau makes his way to the plane, right? And we're not going to watch this whole video, but I just wanted you to see the crowd, or lack thereof, right? There's nobody there. And hold on, we'll jump ahead. Okay, there we go. Sorry, this is taking a little bit longer, but look, bye everybody. It's weird. And it's not like this is the first time that he's waved at nobody. Here's a whole Spencer Fernando article talking, and back in April 14th, 2018, the title is Trudeau waves to empty airport tarmac. There's nobody there, right? So, I mean, that's a weird thing to do. That's weird, waving at nobody. I mean, maybe there were people behind the glass, but this is not new, right? Who knows? Weird. Okay, Global News is reporting political debate postponed after man dies by suicide on the steps of Alberta legislature. This is December 2nd, reported at 5:45 p.m. and then updated at 9:30. And this is just a sad state of affairs. The article doesn't give any reasons for why the person shot themselves, next of kin being notified and finding a note, et cetera, but my goodness, what a sad state of affairs, right? So I just wanted to point that out. This is happening in Canada. This is happening in Alberta. Huawei is talking about Canada on their public Twitter stream, and so this is the official Huawei Twitter account. Huawei is a leading global provider of ITC infrastructure and smart devices. They're also in the running to build our 5G, despite all of our Five Eyes partners saying, don't do that, because if you do that, Huawei, which is China, will have full access to the Five Eyes network. So that's a bad idea. Don't do that. And Trump has been more direct about his warnings to Canada. But Huawei is tweeting, quote, "The detainment of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou is an unlawful and illegal act. Why? Read this insightful account of events to help you make up your mind." Click here to read more from the Globe and Mail. Interesting. And it takes you to a big Globe and Mail article. And I'm not going to read it right now, but I think that it's interesting the way they're framing this. And Globe and Mail is carrying that water for them, right? I started to read through this article, and going through this article will take me half an hour, so I'm not going to go through it right now. The link is in the description if you want to read it for yourself, but interesting, right? It's interesting stuff. Is this the company that we want building 5G? A company that's openly saying the government of Canada acted unlawfully by detaining Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou, right? My goodness. Crazy, right? And here is the meat and potatoes, the last two stories I'll be talking about today. Global News is reporting provinces demand changes to fiscal stabilization program. Here's what that means. And this goes through the province's failure to demand changes to the equalization program. So instead of demanding that, they're going to try and change this other system that isn't as ingrained. It isn't constitutionally grounded, right? It's not written into Canada's constitution that these things must happen like the equalization payment is. So they're trying to change this other thing instead. It's an interesting tactic. Just like yesterday, I was talking about the premiers coming up with the small nuclear reactors, the ones meant to power, 400,000 homes or 200,000 homes, right? Something that you could put in a neighborhood, it would look like a gym, and it would power all the homes, and it would be cleaner, no waste, blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to be even better than the big nuclear reactors, because the waste is, the byproduct is non-existent. But I haven't read into it. Anyway, that's the spin I've read. So take that for what it is. It's very, very top level. I am not an expert in that, and I haven't read much on it. So still, I thought it was interesting that the premiers went in that direction, doing more than the federal government, who's been extracting money via the carbon tax and then giving it back to people to do what? And what? How much CO2 does that take out of the air? Now, I think it's a fool's errand, because China is by far, and India is the second one, by far the biggest emitters of coal and CO2. Canada has 8.1% of our power has output from coal, right? And in Ontario, it doesn't improve our technology at all. Currently, we're on nuclear, but I mean, we're last generation nuclear. So we need to upgrade we need to have new nuclear to make sure it's the safest, as safe as possible, most efficient, cheapest, right? All that stuff. But we're already off coal, right? So if the push is to help climate change, then again, fool's errand. If the push is to modernize our electrical grid and infrastructure, I'm all for it, right? That's great. That's a good move. And it actually does more, if you want to play the CO2 game, at that, Canada-wide, than Justin's plan. Because Justin's plan doesn't take any out, right? Justin's plan doesn't work, fundamentally. It's flawed. Okay, here's the article talking about the equalization and stabilization payments. Here we go. After pushing the federal government to amend the formula for equalization payments, which gives money to some provinces but not others, premiers upset with the formula shifted focus to changing the fiscal stabilization program on Monday. Premiers of provinces that don't get equalization funds argued it was one way they could get some money back amid the oil and energy sector's economic instability. While meeting in Mississauga, Ontario Monday, premiers tried to find consensus on key issues ahead of their meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the new year. Among the 4 areas of consensus was a call on the federal government to reassess the fiscal stabilization, which provides financial assistance to provinces amid economic downturns. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, who had signaled earlier that he would push for the program to be expanded, told reporters Monday that consensus was reached at the urging of his province, Alberta, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Quote, I want to thank each and every one of my fellow premiers for recognizing and addressing the economic disparity that has arisen in distinct regions of our nation, he said. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney added the consensus reached on the issue was a, quote, tremendous moment of solidarity. Scroll down a little bit. What exactly is the Fiscal Stabilization Program? The Fiscal Stabilization Program is part of the Federal Provincial Fiscal Arrangements Act, the same act that includes other programs such as the Equalization Formula and the Canada Health Transfer. The program allows provinces to file a claim for assistance, which is then reviewed. Provinces have to illustrate they are, quote, facing significant year-over-year declines in their revenues resulting from extraordinary economic downturns, the Ministry of Finance website explains. There are other limitations to the program. For example, provinces must file a claim within 18 months of the fiscal year in question, and they can receive no more than $60 per capita. Trevor Tombe, an associate economic professor at the University of Calgary, explained to Global News that the program is receiving attention from premiers over the typically contentious equalization formula because it seems like a more reasonable and realistic change. Quote, it's very difficult to get any agreement on equalization, Tombe said. Stabilization is just a program that is meant to pay provinces that experience severe drop in their own revenue. It's kind of an insurance program, if you will. It's something simple. It doesn't create losses for any other provinces, and it's something that's easy to justify. Tombe said the $60 cap was instated in 1987 and has never been adjusted for inflation. The $60 cap was over a quarter century ago and is equivalent today to about $120. So just increasing that cap is something I don't think any province will oppose, Tombe explained. How's the program been used in the past? The program has been used by almost every province in the past, most recently by Alberta and New Brunswick. In 2016, the federal government announced Alberta would receive roughly $251.4 million, the maximum amount for which the province was eligible under the $60 per capita rules. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has been calling for the cap to be lifted. During the press conference on Sunday, Kenney called on the federal government to retroactively remove the cap. At the very least, we must see the cap lifted. We want to see that lifted retroactively to recognize the pain we've been going through for 5 years, Kenney said. On Monday, Kenney reiterated that demand, saying that, quote, it basically gives us a little bit back of what we put into the Federation every year. Is it a realistic solution? Tombe noted that the changes to the fiscal stabilization program would be fairly simple for the federal government to make if that's what they chose. It could be easily incorporated into the next federal budget, for example, Tombe said. He noted, however, that both Trudeau and Morneau have been mum on the issue thus far. However, in an email statement to Global News following Monday's meeting, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said the government is open to discussing the demands made by the premiers. Okay, here's her quote. This is me for a second. And just pay attention to how she turns this to what she wants, right? She mentions the premier's concerns first, and note what the second in the list is. And it's kind of like the Liberal tap dance. You start talking about what the audience wants to hear, and then you turn them to what your talking point is. Here we go. Quote, this is Chrystia Freeland. We are open and keen to discuss how the federal, provincial, and territorial governments can tackle issues together, very much including fiscal stabilization, fighting climate change, healthcare and pharmacare, infrastructure, northern priorities, trade, and market access for natural resources, among many others, the statement read. Kenney added on Monday that fiscal stabilization changes would not solve problems he sees in the equalization formula. Quote, Alberta will continue to press for reforms to the equalization program, he said, adding that that was not the focus of the meeting. So Kenney is saying, no, we're still doing that equalization. We're still requesting changes to the equalization payments. Don't forget about that. And here's the last story for this morning. This is a sad one. Financial Post says a very bleak winter. Hundreds of BC communities and thousands of workers struggle to survive in forestry industry carnage. It seems barely a day goes by without an announcement about layoffs, temporary closures, or permanent mill shutdowns in British Columbia's struggling forest industry. As a result, thousands of workers, their families, and many communities have been left facing uncertain futures. The layoffs and shutdowns are causing widespread economic and social pain, says BC Liberal forestry critic John Roussard. It's unfathomable to think of the carnage that's already happened, let alone what will happen this winter, he said in a recent interview. It's going to be a very bleak winter. Roussard said on a visit to Campbell River, a car dealer told him he repossessed 10 vehicles from forestry workers who were out of work. One laid-off worker asked him if he could keep his vehicle until Christmas and sold the dealer a load of firewood to make a payment, Roussard said. On Vancouver Island, where Mosaic Forest Management announced an early winter shutdown of timber harvesting operations, 2,000 people are out of work indefinitely. Among those affected are also about 175 workers in a mill owned by Tolko Industries in Kelowna, where the plant will close permanently on January 8th, while Canfor's decision to permanently close its mill in Vanverby, excuse me if I've got that wrong, north of Kamloops, resulted in the loss of 172 jobs in the community of about 700 people. Basically, I would say 80% or more of the coastal forest sector is down, Roussard said. It's not good. It's really, really tough. Finance Ministry budget numbers show forest revenues are down 11% so far this year, and projected harvest volumes of 46 million cubic meters are the lowest in years. The NDP government faces daily calls for action from the Liberals during the fall session of the legislature, which concluded Thursday. Quote, when will the Premier and his government start paying attention and do something, asked Liberal co-finance critic Shirley Bond, whose Prince George riding is facing about 50 impending layoffs at a mill. Liberal rural development critic Donna Barnett wants the government to grant payment relief to Sigurdsson Forest Products, which owes the province $4.6 million in stumpage fees. She said the company in Williams Lake is committed to paying the fees, but needs a temporary stay on the payments to save up to 200 jobs. SFP is a viable company and wants to continue operations, said President Brian Sigurdsson in a letter to Finance Minister Carol James, Premier John Horgan, and Forest Ministers Doug Donaldson. Quote, we want to continue to support all of our employees and our local businesses and community. Donaldson said the request for relief is before the Ministry of Finance, but he added stumpage rates in the BC interior dropped by 12% in October and 24% on the coast. Stumpage fee is just how much you pay per tree, right? So in an acre, if there's 4,000 trees or something, and the stumpage fee is 12 cents. I don't know if 12 cents is realistic, but whatever the stumpage fee is, you would pay that cumulative, right? If 4,000 times 12 cents is however much money that is, and then you pay that by however much land you buy, right? That's what a stumpage fee is. And they're saying that it's already dropped by 12% in October and 24% on the coast. So so they're saying that the cost to the end to the producer, to the person who owns the mill, is already less, and the government's already facilitated that. That's what that's saying. Okay, back to this. He also said political intervention into the stumpage system could make matters worse for BC companies because it could result in a trade challenge from forest producers in the United States. BC lumber exports to the U.S. already face tariffs of about 20%. I scroll down a little bit. Quote, we understand the impact of the global downturn is having on the economies of the interior, and we're determined to address it, he said in the legislature. He said the province has taken steps to drive more logs to domestic production and for use in value-added products. Industry spokeswoman Susan Yarkovic said it can rebound, but companies need assurances from the government about long-term availability of timber supply at a reasonable cost. The industry itself must move to greener products and become more competitive on the global market, she added. I love how they shoehorn that in, right? Usually a mill needs to be sustainable because they have to plan for the future, right? You're not moving a mill every few years. They're replanting trees. They're making sure that what they do is sustainable in a way that their business can run for 100 years, right? Which it has. And I'll get to that in just a minute. It just seems funny how they shoehorn that kind of stuff in, right? Back to this. Quote, I've spent 25 years in the resource sector and I've spent a lot of time in many of the communities that are hurting, said Yurkovich, president of the Council of Forest Industries. The most important thing we can do for those communities in transition is to look at where are the future opportunities for the sector. A report by the council in September said the industry has been a cornerstone of the BC economy for more than 100 years, and the well-being of 140 communities is closely linked to the health of the sector. It said the forestry industry supports about 140,000 jobs and generates about $4 billion in revenue annually for the province. Right, so shutting it down, and it's down by up to 80%, that's a lot of money, right? That's a bad idea. Whew, wow. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com and have a wonderful